Hello. Okay, I'm going to do something that I've never really done before in this format. I'm going to pay tribute to a dear friend of mine that passed away 8 days ago on Monday, Bob Innes. And I just wanted to do this because I'm really going to miss Bob. I missed him already, just over the last week. Like, one of the things, I'd come out here with an idea and I'd phone him up and get his opinion. Now, that is what gets interesting, because if you knew Bob and if you know me, you could never get two people more diametrically opposed in political and religious and just general worldview than the two of us. Bob was a fair bit older than me, but that didn't make him irrelevant to me. He was very intelligent. How I gauge that is because I can make him laugh. Like, no matter what we were discussing or arguing, whatever, I could always pull something out of the holster and it would break him up. And to me, that's because sometimes you can't joke around with people. That's a philosophy that I have. I've learned you can't joke with stupid people. I'm sorry to say that, but it's my mantra. Anyways, Bob Innes. So what I'm going to play is something from about 2 years ago. DPR, originally what I was going to do is, and I'm still going to do, I just got sidetracked with a couple issues of my own. We were going to play episodes from the Bioneers radio show, which I do have written permission to do, and then we're going to have a panel discussion afterwards. So when I was setting that all up, I came across this one episode that was very pro-feminist, and I couldn't think of a better person to counterpoint it than Bob. So Bob was more than willing to come in and let me guinea pig him in, and we did this. His audio is fairly good. Mine wasn't that great because, again, I was still kind of learning this stuff. And but no, he came down and he said what he had to say, and I think we had a lot of fun. Now, I'm not going to edit this out. I'm just going to let it play. The context is it was following an episode of the Bioneers that featured Gloria Steinem. You probably know who that is. And we just let it go. We ended up, because the audio on my end was a little bit not as good, we re-recorded it. But the second recording, although better technically, it lost some of the genuine original vibe to it. So I always kept this one. I won't play the episode. You can look it up, Bioneers, Gloria Steinem episode. I'm just going to play Bob and I talking about this. And again, I'm going to miss you, Bob. What can I say? Like, Bob was one of the few people that actually I would talk on the phone to. Everybody today is just texting and messenger and you name it. But there's something to be said about the art of the phone conversation. Bob and I, and actually I'm missing him right now. Just think that, because I'd come out here with an idea, call him up, or he'd phone me up and we'd talk. We would talk for an hour or so. So yeah, there's something to be said about that. There was nothing irrelevant about my relationship with Bob, even though we were very, very, very different people. So here we go. We're going to play the audio, and we'll see where it goes.
Growing up period with an intact family, and I know this has happened in my own life, and it has a certain effect on the next generation. So I think, and it's deleterious for society in general to have this happening. So I see a connection between that and feminism.
Yeah.
So we want to respect women. We want strong women. And many of the things that she said, I would support 100%.
Oh, okay.
But I think the attempt to completely overturn the gender roles that have been established for 1,000 years or more.
But established by what standard? And she touched on the fact that many cultures, they don't have gender in their language. Like other cultures have a more equal-based society where women are making equal decisions to men. So I guess we're actually taking that view here. Like, according to what standard? Is it a religious standard that you're talking about personally? That is that helping you define?
It's many different.
Yeah.
These sources are sort of all linked, like the churches and the societies and the kings and the hierarchies and so on. It's all, we've been going as a society for 1,000 years now in the Anglo world, and all of a sudden these things we're saying, well, let's just all of a sudden let's make like the Iroquois and have no gender. And I don't think you can just take an enormous institution and history and culture and traditions and just upend it at the snap of a finger. And yeah, okay, we recognize that's happening, but there's all kinds of interlinked things. Like one of the rallying cries of feminists is equal pay. And I just think equal pay...
I'm glad, sorry to interrupt, but I'm glad you brought that up, because this was one of the conversations you and I had. Do you remember that? We were sitting out by the hot tub, and I want you to give that analogy again, because I'll speak to it when you're done. But do you remember the example you gave me?
Well, I certainly remember the defining moment in my life where I started to think about this was finding some old newspapers in a renovation job from it was newspapers from the 20s, I guess, or 1910s, or in that area. And
when you were a teenager?
No. Well, shut up, Dean. Casting aspersions upon my ancientity is not allowed.
Okay.
Anyway, the newspapers. There was advertisements. I looked at the classifieds, and so there was maybe a carpenter or a laborer or something like that, and he was being offered $35 a week, and there was domestics at being offered $7 a week. Well, you do the math. The worker. Male worker could get together with the domestic, and together if they wanted to get married, they would have an income of $42. I guess in today's terms we should make that per hour instead of per week, but it's all relative, these things. So don't get thrown off by the numbers. But when they wanted to have children, they would be able to, the woman would be able to quit, and the family would still be earning $35 instead of $42, which is a bit less, but it's not drastically less. Now you have families where it's completely upsetting because the wages, they may not be totally equal, but they're much more equal, so that it almost requires that both people continue to work, which takes time, that nurturing time away from the children, no matter how much the feminists want to declare that, we've got child care and we've got kindergarten, all-day kindergarten now, and various other social supports, but it's not family. And once the child is put in care of government institutions, then you have, I think you lose the independence of mother and family as the direction giver for the children. I mean, they may not be right, they may think anything, but at least they're giving a direction and values to the children that are not the values of governments and politically correct things.
Sorry to interrupt, but okay, we're getting back to your original thing was equal pay. That's what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, but the analogy that's not what they're complaining about. They're not complaining about like somebody doing a different job and getting paid less than a man doing a different job and getting paid. Equal pay is for, if I'm going to go and lay bricks for a living,
I recognize
and I'm
that.
getting $15 an hour. Let's say $15 an hour. Aaron should get $15 an hour for doing the same job. Aaron, is my wife, and so I think and I thought it at the time, but that analogy doesn't really address the not to put you on the spot, but it doesn't really address the idea and the concept of what I understand them to be asking for when they say we deserve equal pay. I think it boils down to, very simply, equal pay for the same job. If I'm doing a job,
within the...
And I think you were drawing upon the fact that, yes, a man in the 1920s was making, say, $35 a week being a carpenter, and a woman doing a housekeeping job would maybe get less money. Well,
actually, I wish I could remember whether it was a carpenter or just general labor, because I think there's no reason why a domestic who does general labor and very hard work, and especially in those days with no washing machine, there's no reason why she shouldn't get equal pay to a guy doing, just at the end of a wheelbarrow or something like that. Yeah, he's outside in the rain, but she's on her knees scrubbing the floor.
So you're talking about basic labor, not skilled labor.
Well, I must say I have to go back and check and find an old newspaper if I still got it. But and it is a good point that a carpenter would be at a higher level and not equivalent at all to a domestic. But at the same time, I think. I can generalize it to say that roughly, the genders have come much closer together in terms of their pay, except at the highest levels of management. So that
Why is that?
Well, and that's a fair point, but I don't even necessarily think that that's what we should be shooting for as a society. So the feminists say, we want equal pay for equal work. We don't want the glass ceiling, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. But what I want for society is the greatest good for the greatest number. And I don't think that what the feminists want is the greatest good for the greatest number. In theory, they do. But the way it's working out, when you consider the impact on the family and the children, and I frankly, I think that the bringing up of the next generation trumps, sorry to use the term, all other considerations. The children are the reason, the raison d'etre for the two people to get together in the first place.
Now you're going back to, and what I've noticed, you're going back to the children and what's happening to that. And again, this is, if I'm not mistaken, again, you're putting, it seems like, the female in the role of raising children. Sure. And it comes down to that.
Sure. I mean,
and what was spoken to in the episode is that there's things that men can do. Like, how do you feel about stay-at-home men, or stay-at-home fathers? I should say.
Well, I just stumbled on a study on Facebook today that somebody posted that the divorce rates are higher when men become basically feminized and start doing all kinds of housework.
Are they really? Like, why? Well, when you were talking about, when you were using, like, I'm not even fully understanding what a feminist is yet, and this is why I guess I'm doing this, is to broaden my understanding of things. And the Bioneers are I've always loved the show, but even when you were using the term domestic, I didn't like it.
I know. It's become a politically
vulgar. It's
a politically incorrect term. We still have domestics.
Mm-hmm.
We still have nannies. We still have caregivers. But we come up with all kinds of politically correct terms. My wife is a personal service worker.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it's a very necessary function in an old age home. But I kind of think that society has gotten a little bit too far into these politically correct terms, and we better go back to using honest, direct terms that just say exactly what it is.
Right.
A sewage plant is not a pollution control center. It's a sewage plant. So just call it that. And a hospital is not a what do they call them? Healthcare centers? That's rubbish. A hospital is a hospital. We all know what happens in a hospital.
So we're back to language again.
We're back to language. So, as to what a feminist is. Well, I have some conflicts within my own mind on this, because I have a daughter, and I don't want that daughter to be a domestic or a a weak person. I want her to be strong, feminine person who's going to be both feminine and a capable human being.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't mind if she wants to step out, get married, stay home, whatever. I'll be quite content. If that's what her choice is. And I think there's an awful lot of pressure on women nowadays to go out and slay the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been women all through the ages. I know I've listened to podcasts on and TVO things on fantastic women that have done incredible things. Oh, there was the first woman, the first computers were practically made by a woman. I can't remember her name, but she worked in the 1800s. She and another male.
And what was she paid to compared to the male?
I don't think she was paid anything. She just, most of the work, I think she was a society woman. I'm not sure. I can't remember the details exactly, but she didn't need to work. She didn't need to get paid. So, and I don't know about the fellow whether he got paid.
I understand. Okay.
Right. These are mucky mucks to begin with. I think anyway. But so women have emerged out of the blue from the great mass of society. There's been certain women that have just been incredible women. But now there's pressure on every woman to be incredible. And I suppose that has a benefit to our economy. But
is that what they're complaining about, or is it just pressure to be equal?
Well, the feminists want to be equal.
Mm-hmm.
And they also want to do terrific things, slay the dragon or whatever. And they want to have every single opportunity open to men. And I don't know how completely society can change, but and I think part of my resistance comes from all of the other things that get associated with this whole thing. So in other words, this cannot be seen in separation from all of the other things: immigration, refugees, racism, Islamophobia.
Yeah, she touched on all that, yeah.
That's right, and so it's all of one group. So, and certainly I went to the protest here in Hamilton where there was some concerned citizens that were concerned about this M103. That's not a bill; it's some other kind of motion and the idea was that Islamophobia was identified by name instead of just calling it in general, discrimination or something. So Islamophobia is now a thing. So to my mind, that means if I'm worried about Islam and Sharia law, then I must be an Islamophobe. And, by the way, you must be a bigot and a racist too.
So
that shuts down the discussion.
So you're a femophobe.
I'm.
Is that the word, femophobe?
I suppose it could be. I'm trying to avoid.
So you touched on something earlier there, and you said that you didn't understand, you didn't see where it was going in that. So why not step back and just kind of let things happen? It's too bad we didn't. In a way, we could have had somebody that was very opinionated and spoken on the feminist side, but I was worried about arguments, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for you to explain to me what a feminist was and what they wanted. And
our listeners will have the original recording by the Bioneers to give the feminist perspective.
Yeah,
it's
been presented here,
I'm just trying my best to
equal time
give, and I don't think I'm doing a very good job because
you're doing fine.
I'm not totally against the idea that women can grow up to be, or girls can grow up to be capable, interesting, involved women, or and or they can grow up to be family oriented and just interested in raising children. But the bottom line for me is the children. I really couldn't care less about men or women as long as the children are looked after.
Okay, that's a great point. And I'm looking at the time. We're going to end it, I think, there. And Bob, thanks so much, okay, for being a part of this. And
terrific.
This is on, you're down here in my basement, and we're trying to figure out this podcast and what we're going to do. We're definitely going to have you back. I have a whole catalog of topics. You're a very well-spoken guy, and I appreciate you coming over and talking about this. I kind of set you up a bit for the first one because you're a lot of fun.
You're always forgiven.
Okay, and over the next couple weeks, we'll do some more stuff. We'll work out some technical issues that we've been having tonight. But thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and thanks for listening, if you are. And really, all I have to say is that, I don't know, to each their own, and if, I'm all about equality. I hope, that happens for everybody, but if it doesn't, I understand why people feel it's not. I kind of understand sort of in a way where you're coming from, Bob, and I really appreciate the fact that your main concern is the family unit and the children. So I think we'll just leave it at that. So that was good to talk about, and now we've got something to think about. All right, all the best.
Okay, take care.
All right, that was Bob. While that was playing, I had so many memories pop into my head of the 16 or so years I knew this gentleman. And there's some funny stuff. Like about a year ago, a bunch of us were out here in the workshop. We had the stoves going. It was the coldest night of the year, minus 35. It must have been February. It must have been about a year ago, I betcha. And my buddy and I, we're jamming on acoustics in the background, and Bob and his friend were here discussing something live on Periscope. I think it had to do with corn tariffs. I can't remember the what of it, but Bob was cold because he wandered over here in like bowling shoes because he used to live like 5 seconds away. I can see his house if I go on my front porch. So he was cold. So I dug out this old camping stove, like propane unit, and fired up for him. Put it down by his feet. I go, there you go, Bob. Anyways, we go about doing what everybody's doing, and about 20 minutes later, I smell burning rubber, which is freaking me out because I figure something's on fire. Like, we got propane, we got wood, we got everything going. I'm running around trying to figure it out. It's Bob's shoes. He put them right on the heater, and he didn't even notice. But his shoes were melting, and, there was that. The irony of that was Bob, we had a lot of fun with that, but ironically, Bob started into a poem, the Cremation of Sam McGee, I believe is what it's called, and he did it word for word, and he got right in front of the camera on Periscope and just recited it perfectly with conviction and feeling and character and projection, and it was just, I looked for the video, it's gone, I don't have it, I must got deleted, I don't know, I wish I still had it, but I thought there wouldn't be a more fitting piece than that to wish Bob all the best. So Bob, Mr. Bob Innes, Godspeed. And we're going to close with the cremation of Sam McGee. I keep wanting to say Bob McGee. Sam McGee. And this version is read by Johnny Cash. All the best, Bob.
There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men that toil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Lebarge that I cremated Sam McGee. Now, Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the South to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way, I'd sooner live in hell. On a Christmas day, we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail, and you talk of your cold, but through the parka's fold it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close, then the lashes froze, till sometimes we couldn't see, It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars overhead were dancing heel and toe, he turned to me and, "Cap," says he, "I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request." Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. Then he says with a sort of a moan, "It's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold till I'm chill clean through to the bone. Yet it ain't being dead, it's my awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that, foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains." Well, a pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I would not fail. And we started on at the break of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. And he crouched on the sleigh, and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. With a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid, I hurried horror-driven. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and because of a promise given, it was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, "You may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate my last remains." Now, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were numb, in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows, oh God, how I loathed that thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow, and on I went though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. And the trail was bad, and I felt half mad, but I swore I'd not give in. And I'd often sing to that hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake LeBarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a thrice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then here, said I with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying round, and I heaped the fuel higher. Well, the flames just soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you never did see. And I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. And the heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out, and they danced about before I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, "I'll just take a peek inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked." Then the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, "Please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm. And since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, this is the first time I've been warm." There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men that toil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LeBarge that I cremated Sam McGee.
As my thinking deepens during this election, I've realized that the primary engine of our problem in Ontario is high taxes. Big government and high taxes actually cause poverty. So the NDP says we've got to raise wages and benefits. But taxes, or government shown here, is 40% of the entire economy as represented by this piece of paper. the 60% on the left is the producers. Now take the 40% out of the producers, and you find that the remaining 20% represents the actual cost of producing the cars or toothbrushes or whatever. But people have to pay the whole 60% to cover the taxes, which explains why the growth of taxes percolates through the economy as inflation. Therefore, the NDP and the poverty activists have it exactly backwards. The benefits they demanded and got over 40 years drove their prices so high, their benefits could not keep up. It's a spiral. The poor can't win. To the poor, it makes no difference higher wages or lower prices. But to the exporter, it makes a great difference. Higher taxes and wages equals higher prices, equals lost business, equals lost jobs, 150,000 of them, which means recession. Do not make the mistake of blaming the dollar for this. The dollar is only at par. It's high taxes that make our exports too expensive. And we now see people shopping in the U.S. So big government is the enemy of the worker and the poor, not its friend, despite 40 years of promises and programs. The poor can never catch up. Only the bureaucrat wins. The other major consequence of high prices is its effect on young Canadians. Graduating with high debt and poor prospects, unwilling to marry and have children that are now too much trouble. Discouraged families fail. Children neglected or shuffled off to daycare. Sports and music programs beyond reach. Kids take refuge in shooting drugs or shooting people. So our whole culture is fading for want of live babies and responsible families. 2 or 3 million babies alone aborted out of existence, not to mention birth control. So who will pay for all this health care in nursing homes? Trudeau lied when he made health care the carrot that pulls the taxpayer donkey along. Thus weakened, we enter a time where religious hatreds gather without, and the religious pot is stirred within. Nukes from Russia fly overhead, and the U.S. is hated by too many of us. Canada will be a vulnerable country in a few years, ripe for turmoil and final perversion from its old values of strength, fairness, and loyalty. Its institutions now trashed, legal pillars smashed, economy bashed. Only the Family Coalition Party has any clue what the problem is. Please vote Bob Innes, Family Coalition, and vote for MNP. Probably our only hope to get anywhere this election. Thank you.